All right, now we are on the record. So again, my name is Behnaz Rahani and I am the AMATYC Professional Development Coordinator. We are so glad you are here, and I will give the floor to our book club person, which is Christine.
Is that what you call me, a person? I'm a real person now? Hey!
Yeah.
Hallelujah. Okay. So
That is on top of being an angel.
Oh, thank you. But only because you are too. Okay. And so, so anyhow, hello everybody. This book was suggested to us by Judy Williams, oh gosh, whatever, a year ago, maybe about a year ago. Yeah. And at the time, we were looking at a different book. We were looking at the James Lang book. And so, but through a couple of iterations of voting, this book won out this time, and I'm really glad it did, because it's not math per se. There is some stuff about math in there, but it's not math per se. It's about communicating. And it's something that we just don't seem to think about as we're teaching. I mean, we know we're communicators. We know that, or at least we hope we are communicators, and effective communicators at that. So reading a book on communication actually is right up our alley. And so I'd like to start out by going around asking everybody who they are, where they're from, and just tell us one thing about the book that you really enjoyed, okay? And so I'm going to start. I'll start. I'm Christine Mirbaha. I'm from the Community College of Baltimore County in Baltimore, Maryland. And I really enjoyed the whole book, to tell you the truth. But what I did enjoy the most was where he was talking about how we have to be able to read our audience, really get to know them, to not just to see them and but to really get to know them in order to effectively communicate with them. And it got me thinking about how I was going to incorporate that into my classes more so than what I'm already doing now. And with that, let's see, I'm going to go straight to Joanne.
Okay, I am from El Paso Community College in El Paso, Texas, the state that has the wonderful governor. I've read the book twice now, and I really love it. My favorite chapter is the last chapter, and it has I go into my classrooms and I tap out happy birthday, and then I ask how many kids understood what I was doing, and generally nobody does. And I said, that's our communication problem, and we have to know that I'm thinking one thing and you're thinking something else. And so we need to get together and think about that when we're talking in the classroom, both communication both ways.
Cool, thank you. And Judy?
Well, I'm Judy Williams. I live in Norfolk, Virginia, retired from Tidewater Community College. And I read the book a while ago, and I picked it up and leafed through a few pages today and happened to read the chapter where the gentleman is talking about how he realized he needed to get his students active if they were going to learn anything, that he could give the very best lecture, but if they weren't active. And I thought, well, I think some of us have discovered that, but it is so much easier sometimes just to tell them, and then you don't realize what they don't know. And I had my own personal medical experience this past year and can relate to the fact that doctors often just do not get to tell you what they should be telling you, and you're too scared to answer because you think you should know.
Huh. Wow, thank you. That is really cool. Okay, Barry.
Yeah, I'm Barry Smith. I'm from Casper College in Casper, Wyoming, and we're nice and warm today. We're at 49 or 50, so we don't have snow. But yeah, I enjoyed the whole book. It was really thought-invoking, and I thought it was kind of cool how an actor set up this thing for teaching this to other, scientists and things like that. So I thought that was really good. But the thing I really thought was the funniest was at the end when he said he was telling his grandson about all this stuff, and he went in an hour lecture, and then he heard him talking, oh, I'm not going to ask grandpa anything ever again. It's a long lecture. And sometimes I feel that way when I lecture to my students in class. And so that's why this year or this semester, I started doing active learning a lot in my class. So basically I don't lecture, and the students are doing all the active learning the whole time. They're at the boards explaining things. They have teams and they're doing all this stuff. And from day one, when it started, I could see that, oh, I assume you know how to do foil because you're in this upper division class, but you don't even know how to foil. So it was eye-opening to kind of even just see that, because before I would have just kept going and not realized they forgot how to foil. So it's overall really the whole book.
Wow, that's cool. It's great that you're using that. Thank you. Okay, Kira.
Hello, I'm Kira Ryder. I'm from Kishwaukee College in Northern Illinois. So was it Suzanne? Yep, Susan. We have snow. I think it's still kind of snow flurrying right now. It's a horrible day out here. So I'll take 49 and sunny over, 32 and rainy, snowy, gross. But I will say I listened to the audiobook, so that was like an added bonus because I got to hear Alan Alda tell the stories in his own voice. And I had a lot of the same reflections you did. I, unlike several of you, have not applied anything because I just finished it this past week. One of the things I did that I haven't followed up on was he talked about Stephen Strogatz, and he wrote about, that was the mathy piece of it. So I pulled up his article. It's sitting here on my phone, but I still haven't read it yet. So it's like tiny baby steps towards improvement.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Well, welcome. Okay, Susan.
Hello, I'm Susan Hartoonian from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm at Kirkwood Community College, and I will have to admit I have not gotten around to reading it yet. I just recently saw this was being offered, and so I've ordered it, and it's on hold waiting for my Thanksgiving break. So I'm excited to read it, but I still wanted to come to this anyway and just hear you guys discussing it. So
Cool. Well, welcome. And Benaz?
Yes, I have to admit I haven't had the chance to read the book either. So,
Okay.
and I love what I just heard so far. So it's amazing.
Okay. Well, I have some questions that I want to ask people and get people's reactions to that I was jotting down as I was reading this second time through. And so hopefully this will help us with some conversations, and the people who haven't read it yet will be able to get some stuff out of it already, and maybe even have their own opinions still, even if you haven't read it. So please chime in, okay? All right, so basically, he talked about empathy. He talked about having feelings and thinking. He talked about it in terms of the head and the heart towards the beginning of the book, and that theme went through the entire book. So I wanted to ask, when we communicate with people, we need to know both what they're feeling and what they are thinking. So how do you figure out what your students are feeling, or how do you start out empathizing with them, and how do you carry that through all the way through the rest of the semester?
I think it's really difficult to do with the masks on, because I use the full face and watch the full face and see what's happening. And the eyes and the forehead is not quite enough. And then I can ask probing questions too.
Others? Go ahead.
For me, I have been teaching online for the past 6 years. So the way that I get to know about their feelings is reading between lines, what they write to me. So what they write, it really conveys the way they are feeling. So sometimes I feel that, it's like they want a shoulder to cry on. Other times it's like they want to jump on someone. They had a hard day at work or at home. So it is the reading, what they write to me. That is when it's not even through the emails, even sometimes the discussion posts, it really conveys the message. And it is sad though, but it is how it is.
What I discovered through the years was that I knew more about my online students than I did the face-to-face ones, because it was hard to have them talk in front of other people or to come privately talk, even if you invited them to do so. But those posts in the discussion board, if they introduced themselves, they might feel a little more free to write, but they'd also email about things that they would never have felt comfortable with in person. So I don't know if there was a way I could have done more to incorporate that, maybe with journals. I found out with a ladies group I had at church, they wouldn't necessarily say things around the table, but I had given them each a little journal from the dollar store at the beginning, and every week they could write in there anything they wanted to, and they felt much more comfortable doing that. Unfortunately, I discovered that after I retired, but maybe it will help someone else.
Yeah, I do that kind of. I've got feedback there. But yeah, when I teach, I noticed the same thing. My online, I knew way more about them, but this semester on my in class, I've actually added a lot of self-reflection posts and journals and other kinds of ways so they can talk with me, and it's just me and them only see it, and they open up a lot more, and they're more honest, because before sometimes I wouldn't even know, well, why did you fail this test? And now they're saying, I have them do a pre and post and explain, where do you think you are for this test? Where are you after the test? And they're like, before, oh yeah, I think I'm ready, or then afterwards, oh, I really didn't study, I just thought I studied, and so yeah, that's why I failed the test or whatever. So I can see that they're really being honest too, because they're thinking deeply about this, and I think that's where I'm getting a lot more interaction with them. In class with active learning, I can get more out of it, because they're at the board and they're trying to write and they're like stuck, and it's like, okay, now are you not understanding? And you can kind of guide them and stuff like that. So that's helping me do more in class interactions with them and understanding where they're lost. But before, when you're just lecturing, the only thing you could see is their eyes or their face, and it's like, well, are you not understanding, or you just don't care, or what's going on? And then they're like embarrassed, they don't want to talk and say anything. So it's like, okay, they don't want to ask questions, because then their peers would look down on them. But now with this active learning, everybody's asking questions, everybody's engaged, and it's really nice.
Mary, can I ask you a question? When you do the pre and post test, like reflections, like, do you do that a couple days before the test, or do you do that like the day of, just real quick before the test, real quick after the test? What's the timing there?
I have it open up to the hour of the test, so they can do it right up to the time they take the test. It's in our LMS, and then after the test, the one for the post opens up, and then they have until midnight that day to do it. So that way, it's still fresh in their mind that day. So.
Okay, thank you.
Do you grade it?
Yeah, I grade it and I read it that way. I don't grade it for it's right or wrong. I grade it if they did it or not. And so it kind of adds, I think, 10 points to the test exam if they do it. And so, because I want to see what they think. And it's helped a lot of them realize that they're really not studying like they're supposed to. And a lot of them they've actually turned around and started doing a lot better. So I've seen a positive thing from it.
Cool. Now, when you say 10 points, how many points are on your tests before that?
It's usually 100. So, it's like not too much, and not everybody does it. So it's not a thing. It's required. It's points, but it's just part of the score. It's not extra credit or anything. It's just instead of being 100 points, it's going to be 110 points for the test, basically. So.
Oh, okay. It's cool, because we're not allowed to give extra credit.
Yeah,
And,
I don't give
yeah.
extra credit either.
No, we're only allowed to give 1%. Trying to explain to a student that 1% isn't going to make a difference
Yeah, exactly.
and of course they require a lot of work for that.
That 1%. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's why that's a very interesting way to do this incentive wise.
Mhm.
Wow, cool. I have to say I forgot to have Elham introduce herself. What, Elham? Can you introduce yourself so that
I
everybody?
think Elham left.
No, she's here.
Yeah, yeah,
She left.
yeah, I think she's
Oh.
not on the
Oh,
agenda.
okay, because I've got her still on here. That's why I was asking. Okay. All right. Well, does anybody else want to add anything before we move on? All righty. So here's another thing that hit me. There's a lot of things that hit me while I was reading this. One of them was the concept of start where your students are. We hear this all the time, but sometimes it's difficult to do that because everybody's all over the place. So how do you get people to come to the same spot so that you can move forward, so you don't lose the students who are a little bit lagging behind, and you don't lose the students who are so far ahead that they're going to fall asleep on you?
I found sometimes what I'll do to start a class is have like a warm-up problem or something, and just so I can see where those students are, Now from there, it's hard because you do have that full range, but it gives me sort of a baseline of who's going to need a little more help, who is going to be okay. And, it lets me know where the students are. Working with that knowledge, though, then that's a bigger challenge that I don't know if I know the answer to.
Anybody else?
Yeah, that's hard. I have with my active learning class, I have all my lectures online on YouTube. And so they're supposed to watch those and read the section if they want to. The lecture's good enough, they shouldn't have to. And so then everybody should be at least at the end of a lecture, they should be all close to the same. They might not understand all the details the same, because then at the first of the class, I give them a 1-question quiz, and everybody has to take that quiz. And so they know that there's going to be a quiz. They know it's going to count for points. And so everybody is actually engaging and watching those videos. And so, they're trying to be all at the same place to be able to do that quiz at the first of class. And then, throughout class, then it's more problems throughout the class. And then that's when it starts getting harder, and you can see different teams are at different paces. And so then, the ones that are ahead, they can move on and do more questions than the ones that are lower. And then I can spend more time with the ones that need more help and help them. And so it seems to be working so far, and it's getting people more level. So the ones that are lower aren't left behind, and the ones that are more advanced, they can move on fast as they want to and do more. So I don't know. That's what I'm doing right now, and it seems to work. Who knows if next semester it will.
Does anybody use the idea of mindfulness in their classes? Where we have a colleague here who every class, the way she starts to get everybody focused, and she does this in meetings too. It's kind of freaky, but she'll start by saying, okay, now we're going to close our eyes, and I'll let you know when we're going to stop, but I'd like you to just come into the moment, concentrate on your breathing, that kind of a thing, the mindfulness thing. And Alan Alda did mention this in his book, and about how it was easier for him to focus and to focus on people's feelings, their body language and things like that as a result as well. So I was wondering, does anybody do that in their classes and to bring everybody together at all? I guess that's a no, huh? Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, it works in terms of meetings with people. A lot of the times you know, if it's like a meeting where everybody's coming from, you know, I've been in class and I'm dealing with this and I'm dealing with this other problem over here and everything else, just to take a few minutes so that everybody is focused and then in the present. And it seems to really help a lot. I've been trying it a little bit with my students. It's kind of difficult when half of them are traipsing in after classes started, you know.
I am attending the mindfulness webinar later today, though. So that's like a good segue, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I probably should have saved that to the end, but yeah, I'm actually signed up for that and I'll attend for a while, but I cannot stay. So, okay, well, let's see. When you're on a search committee, how do you determine if a candidate can actually teach? Okay, he was talking about the communication and getting ideas across to everybody, and then he also talked about how, and Judy, you probably experienced this with your medical issue, where the doctor was talking more, and you had to figure out what the doctor was saying, because the doctor's on one, is explaining it at one place and you're at a different place and the two aren't together. So how do we determine that people, when they're teaching, are going to be communicators, people who can actually get the point across to people at different things, with different backgrounds and so on and so forth?
We used to have an interesting time in my department when we interviewed. The division dean would sit in with us, and she was an English person. And her thought was, even if she might not understand some of the technical things, she should at least be able to follow, stay with him, and get the overall picture, whoever the candidate, whoever we were interviewing.
Wow.
And my doctor choice was more on empathy than knowledge to begin with, because my regular dentist said I needed to see an endodontist, and I kept trying to get appointments. I was in extreme pain and wanted help. And receptionists would say, well, we can see you in 4 weeks or 2 weeks, or you're not in our insurance network, so I don't know what we'll have to do about this. And it just went on and on. And finally, someone recommended someone who was actually not in my network. But the first thing that happened when I talked to the woman on the phone was, when I said I was in pain, she said, oh, I am so sorry to hear that. We do have an opening at 11 today. Can you come? And then from there, it was just, he had pictures that he would put up and show me and tell me what was going on. And it was just, he was communicating. He would sit in that chair and spend time and make sure I understood. So it was not a canned spiel, which I hate to go into a class and just, you don't get a chance to ask questions and it just goes so fast.
The lecture, the definite lecture, yeah. Now, he talks about lectures in there. There was a quote. Hold on, I've got it someplace here. There was a quote that he had up there about that. Nope, that's not the one. Hold on. I've got it all written. The terrible thing is I've got pages. So there was a quote that I actually saw in there on lecturing. Okay, here it is. On page 111. Okay, he's Alan Alda is talking with a mathematician about a dream that he had when he was trying to work on the communications. There was an exercise he was doing. He was taking part in a study, not really, but he was doing it anyhow, about communication. And it's on page 111. The study actually starts before that. Anyhow, so he said, what he said was he had this dream, and he was talking to the Stephen S., the person that we were talking about before, and he said that in his dream he was visiting a mathematician. So this is why he was talking with Stephen about it, and they were talking about different opinions that they had and everything. And he noticed that they were not talking, he was not getting his point across. He was not communicating with this person. And so they were trying, but he could see that the mathematician was losing the focus and losing the attention. And so anyhow, he said that he could see that, and I'll quote this, he says, I could see that his face had fallen. I could hear what the me in the dream was thinking. You didn't show him how open you were, because he was saying that he wasn't open to any kind of opinions at all. So you didn't show him how open you were, you lectured him. And I thought about that and I said, you know, how often do we think that we're communicating this wonderful ideas to our students? And we're actually just lecturing at them. And they're sitting there as glassy-eyed as they were when they were trying to read the textbook. And I was wondering, how do we combat that? How do we get them how do we get to understand them? And I thought, well, you know, I explain things different ways. I do things different ways. Drives my students up a wall, by the way. I have in my evaluations, a lot of times my students say, I wish she would only explain it one way, you know? I'm like, no, I'm trying to reach everybody. I'm not trying to reach just one. But how do I change from lecture to getting them to the point where it's more like they are internalizing it for themselves? Does that make sense? So how do you do that? Because I'm flummoxed when it comes to that.
I liked the two suggestions that Alan Alda used. One of them was to use some humor to get them sort of reeled in, and then the telling stories. Now, can you tell a story about everything in mathematics? Obviously not. So I liked both of those in terms of helping engage the student. But yeah, you're right. And some of it just, like, I love the idea of active learning. There's just that scary part of what if they are just not wanting to do it, or they're like, they don't even have like a little clue to hang on to. So yeah, that would be my only suggestions, was the use of humor and the use of telling a story. I did that the other day in class. I'm like, look at me telling a story. But that's a struggle too. Yeah, that's, how do you fix all of this?
I did that last night when I was teaching all day. I have 3 classes of statistics, pretty much back to back on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so yesterday we were talking about hypothesis testing and just introducing it and you know, the different kinds of tests. And I said something about, I was trying to explain the difference between a left-tailed, a right-tailed, and a two-tailed. And when I got to two-tailed, I said, well, you know, the Coca-Cola bottling company bottles the things and everything else. And I told them, you know, too little, too big, right? And then I said, then I go into the store and I said, you can watch me do this. Come with me next time. I walk into the store and I look at, if I'm going to buy a bottle of soda, I look at all the bottles and I look for the one that's highest. And I grabbed that one and they all just sort of burst out laughing, you know, like, and that's how I got across the different kinds of tales. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool, you know, they actually understood, but it's a rare moment, you know. And Barry, I don't understand. I agree with Kira. It's kind of scary to let go and let the students discover for themselves, because I'm so often afraid that they're not going to get to where they need to be and I'm not going to get through all the material. How do you make sure that you do that?
I just have a strict timeline, and one of my classes, we're like a day behind or 2 days behind right now, and so, you know, it's going to be different. But the other one, the other 2, I hold them that are in person. I hold them pretty well to what we have to do. But you know what she was mentioning also. What about those students who don't want to do this? You know, that was the hard thing. So when I first started, I had in my college algebra class, I had 5 students and they were like, we hate this, we don't want to do it. And I knew some of them from a previous class and they didn't want to do work. The whole thing, they didn't want to get through. And so they never passed my class. They took it with somebody else and finally found somebody that didn't assign as much homework or something, I guess, I don't know. But they got through, and then they got to this one and they were going to have to do work and show work in class. And they're like, I'm out of here. And they left after a week. And so I had 4 leave. One of them stayed, and he was cussing me out every day. This is so stupid. I hate this. This is not what I want to do. I didn't pay money to do this. Why isn't this listed as a active learning class instead of a regular lecture class? I mean, he just kept going and going. And now he's my leading advocate for this. He's like, this is the best thing in the world. He goes, I am learning so much more. I look forward to coming every day and working with my team, or even doing it on my own at the board. And so, you know, he's like the ideal person. You have the bad, then all of a sudden he loves it. And so, but the others, they just never gave it a chance because they just didn't want to do the work. And so, you know, it's like, well, yeah, I lost a couple of students and stuff, but everybody else is loving the format, and they're really, you know, they're excelling. You know, one of my classes, from last semester to this semester, the grades have gone up about 20% because they're so engaged and so wanting to do this. I don't know if it's a difference between, you know, just students themselves, you know, one semester is always better than another one, or if it's actually this active learning. So I'll have to see, you know, if it does the same thing next semester and they stay at that kind of level, or what. So, but yeah, you do lose some, and some of them don't like it, but you know, eventually I got one turned around and he likes it. So.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Does anybody else want to chime in at this point? No. I guess nobody wants to chime in. Okay. Go ahead.
I was muted. When I was teaching face-to-face, my classes, they were all filled with laughter and stories, and you know, it's just, and the stories were all stories to do with myself and my daughter. So my daughter was growing up at that time. So I will go to class, so every day I'll have something to talk about. And so they will keep telling me, you need to give her a break. Don't be so harsh on your daughter. So, and we will have so much fun in class that, you know, all different jokes and stuff. And it was so much. So it's like I was harmonizing the entire space. And when time was up, they didn't want to leave the room. I was saying, come on, there are people standing. At that time, we were on a quarter system and 50 minutes only. So you can imagine 50 minutes is not a long time. You turn around at the time is gone. So it's really trying to make the, you know, interjecting some stories, some real life stories into mathematics. That way it's like injecting it. And so they found it fun and interesting. And of course, being online, even now with the live sessions that I do with them, you know, I kind of crack jokes. I mean, when I say jokes, these are just funny things, you know, and kind of make it lively for them. Because life is tough as it is, the outside world. So we just have to lighten it up and make it fun and interesting for them. And most of the time I was talking about myself, you know, growing up, how much I hated math. I didn't want to do math at all. And it was my mother who was kind of, you know, after me. Yeah, she was teaching me math because I was so bad in mathematics. And she had this solution manual. It was like a gold pot. So she was a midwife. She had more practice in the house. When she would go to practice, she would give me problems to do. And me, instead of working on the problems, I'll go around the house looking for the solution manual. And lo and behold, I find it and copy the problem. She'll come out and she said, are you ready? Yeah, what? Behnaz is ready, but Behnaz cannot reverse the problem. So I was in trouble. So then, you know, I told them, look, this is me. So I wasn't born to be a mathematician. I went through so much, but someone believed in me. So now I am believing in you, and I know each one of you can do it. I don't want you to become a mathematician. Just love it, like it this semester, only this semester, this time only, so that you enjoy your life. You don't feel so miserable. So, I mean, it's just was making a connection with them that I wasn't born to be a genius.
Yeah, I agree. That's that is a way of looking at it. Ah, I see we have a new person coming in.
Yeah. Violetta.
Violetta, okay. Violetta, hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Do you want to introduce yourself? We already introduced ourselves, so I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and one of the things that you liked about the book. No, we can't hear you again. You lost us.
She's switching her.
Moment, my apologies. Can you hear me?
There we go. Now we can
Okay.
hear you.
Well, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see this lovely group. And so my name is Violetta and Kovacev Nikolic, so forget about my two last names. I teach at the College of the Canyons, which is in the outskirts of LA, but we feel like a different planet. So, and it's a 2-year, it's a community college, right? And I've been here since fall 14, and then in 16, I started working as full-time. So one book, the top of my head, I don't know, there are many books. Okay, sorry.
Well, basically just the book that we're talking about now, the Alan Alda book. What have you learned about that and from that maybe you
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't really learn I'm so sorry. I'm just joining. I have no clue. I'm clueless, so please forgive me.
Oh, okay.
I should stay silent.
No, actually, several people have not read the book yet, so don't worry about it. Just join in the conversation. We're actually talking about different pieces of the book and just sort of how we apply these things to our classroom or how we could, or to our lives. So
I will read it. I understand now how it works. My
Okay.
apologies.
No,
This is
that's
my
okay.
ever first book club.
Well, you know what?
Mine too.
And we don't mind if people haven't read yet. Don't worry. So it's
Thank
my
you.
first one too. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Barry, you, me, I'm pretty sure pretty much everybody here.
Me
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Me
Judy,
too.
everybody. So it's really kind of cool. And you know, the fact that AMATYC is doing this, it was such a wonderful suggestion to even try doing this. I'm hoping that next fall in Toronto, give a plug. I'm hoping to have a session where we can all just sit in the room and talk about a book and maybe even look at some other books and you know, have some physical books there that we can all just sort of look at and then maybe make a decision on a book at that point too. So I think that will help. But I'm hoping that this is the begin. Well, this is actually, we've been working on this now since March, I think was our first one, February or March. And so we're hoping to do this a little bit more regularly, like hopefully once every month or two. We wanted to leave a gap so that people would have time to read the book before we, so, and it's a question of figuring out which book that also helps too.
What did you do the first time? What was the first book?
It was the
Eugene
James
Atom?
Lang book,
No.
Small Teaching.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
the runner-up from the Alan Alda choice was the online teaching from him.
Oh, okay.
But other
Okay.
suggestions have included like Joe Bowler's books. There's lots of books. I'm telling you right now, I am reading, I'll show you. I'm reading a book that I got because I was thinking I would read it for my stats classes. It's called Critical Statistics, but it's actually really fascinating and applies to more than just statistics. So it's really kind of neat. But there's lots of books out there. We've had some books suggested, and we'll have to go through another round of let's choose a book. And I think that would be great. So I'm hoping before we leave today that people who have read other books that they want to suggest will also suggest them. Okay. So think about that a little bit as well. Don't get too distracted as we're going through, because it would be really cool to have a list, and then we could just do this like I would think every other month would be okay for now. But I really would like to make it even more often as we progress, because I think that we learn so much from each other and from the books in surprising ways. You know, so I'm going to go back to the book for just a minute. There was one in here. when I was reading through, one of the things that also got to me was the thoughts about the textbook. Okay, because he was talking about the written word as well as, you know, reading things through as well as just hearing things and communicating that way. So at one point on page 134, as a matter of fact, there was an idea expressed by George Gopin that is very interesting. And the quote starts out, and I'm picking up in the middle of the sentence, unfortunately, but here we are. When people read, they have some basic expectations that have to be met, or the reader will become confused and frustrated. So often our students are saying, I don't know about you all, here it's a real joke. One of the questions on the student evaluations is, so how's the textbook for you? You know, and inevitably that is the lowest rating on everybody's evaluations regardless, okay? For both math and science. So I read that and it sort of resonated with me. I was like, well, yeah, but how do you make it so that it's not confusing? So I wrote down, how can this help us to understand and possibly remedy the often heard comments? Okay, what might our students be expecting to see in this book that we're not providing for them? And how could we fix that? And can we do that with OERs? And why hasn't it been done with regular textbooks? What's the constraints that we're trying to deal with? So I'm going to open the floor to everybody and ask, what do you think?
I'm really with you. This semester, I started using an OER for my pre-calculus, and I have seen a world of difference, so much more engagement. I've just been feeling so sorry for them paying $180, $200 for a textbook, just for the sake of having a textbook and not even opening it up. And now with this OER, I see so much more engagement. They are reading the book, they are doing stuff more, and it's only for a very quarter of $100 they pay for this OER with so much more resources. So it is, I think that's the way to go, going to OER, and I think many schools are considering that.
So, but what makes that OER so much more readable for them?
Well, it is readable because it is, first of all, it got the textbook. It's not just a static textbook. You read some material, you watch a video, and then there are some questions they are asked. Then they read some more, they watch a video, and then there are questions asked. So it is very interactive. So that is the difference.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
So huge textbooks just go on and on and on, and there isn't any interaction. So yes, if you could get a little bit of writing, a video, or some questions that have to be answered, and I think some online material is actually laid out that way now, that you can't go on until you stop and answer some questions.
Yes.
And I discovered years ago, when I would write out notes for my online students to read, to explain the textbook, I got the best use of those once they figured out that every page or so, or every, so many paragraphs, there was a little question that said, if you have read this far, here's a little problem, send me all the work for it, and you'll get a bonus point on the next quiz. I didn't care if it was right or wrong, I just wanted to see their work. Because lots of times I would pick something where I knew a lot of students had trouble, and I could fix that before they missed it on the quiz. But there's no feedback like that for most of those $300 books.
Wow. Huh.
What I notice is difficult, I teach some of the developmental math classes, so I try to make it as accessible to students as possible. But when you try to write definitions in less technical terms, they become less accurate, right? So I think that's part of the problem with a math book is you can't say if you're adding two negative numbers, ignore the sign, add the numbers, throw a negative sign on there. Like you can't say that in a textbook. So I think that's part of what makes it difficult is because it has to be correct. Not that I want to teach students incorrectly, but they need to be able to put it in their own words so that when they reflect back, they understand it, and it's not a textbook definition, it's not an instructor definition, it's their definition. As long as it's accurate and makes sense to them. If that, I don't know if other people feel that way. Is sometimes those definitions, I read them and I get bogged down, but it's like, okay, well, we have to look at the absolute value of the number, and then which one is larger, and then what do you do? And it's accurate. It just bogs you down as you're trying to read it.
Yeah, I found sometimes being mathematically correct is actually restrictive. Yeah, restrictive is a good way of putting it. And so when I used to tutor a long time ago, I tutored when I was in college, I tutored, and I was able to tell the people I was tutoring, look at it, this is the way I look at it. And they'd say, well, gee, I wish that was written in the book someplace. I'm going, you can't, because if we do that, it's not going to work. No, they won't allow that because it's not mathematically correct. Something as simple as talking about the different properties and trying to explain properties and principles. Why can't this work? Well, because, and in fact, I do remember when I was teaching once, I was being observed. And I was working with pre-service teachers, and I was trying to explain the commutative property and the associative property and the distributive property. And I gave a real world example instead of giving the mathematically correct example. And I actually got into a lot of trouble for that. It was written up as you don't know what you're doing. And I was like, yes, I do. And it would, no, you don't. So now I use like the distributive property. I will draw, and I try to time it so that the distributive property is around Halloween. And I draw the lady at the door, with the hair and the earrings, and okay. And my drawings are atrocious. I have to tell you, I cannot draw worth beans. And so I draw the lady, and I draw a little child, and then his older brother, and the little superhero and the hobo, the typical what was when I was growing up. And I explain about how she supposedly gives the same candy to both of them, but then we all know that she gives more candy to the taller guy because she doesn't want to have her house TP'd at the end of the night, and that seems to relate to them more than saying, okay, let's talk about foil, or let's talk about this or that. It seems to help a little bit more, but once again, it's not mathematically correct.
I think, sorry.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I think it's always beautiful if in the classroom we can make it closer to our students, and whatever example is suitable at the moment, we should not be judged so severely. So I'm sorry. maybe today it wouldn't be, but I just the other day I was trying to remind my calculus students that because they still mix like integration of x to the nth versus taking the derivative, and I was trying to say, look, what happens if you are thinking about the word derivative and production? So think of crude oil. I mean, it has nothing to do with and like, what are the components of crude oil? Those are derivatives, right? So those are smaller parts. So the power decreases. And then when we are integrating, think about companies being integrated, therefore becoming one merged, bigger company. So the power increases. Now I have no idea who followed and who didn't, but to me, it made sense. Again, everybody has their unique logic. But OER, I just wish to say, it depends on the course. Benaz, I'm so impressed with your experience, that the video tutorials and everything. Please share what book that is, because I used one for that's okay. It's higher level. It's differential equations. And I used Trench, and students just hated it. They even hated the My Math, what's that, Mom?
Yeah, My Open Math.
My Open Math, yes. And the they didn't like it even there. It was challenging and everything. And then going with Pearson's, Nagelsoft, and Snyder felt like more user-friendly. And then from calculus, I'm getting feedback that WebAssign is really, oh, we love it. Like one student is exploring, but he's probably 1 in 100, that he's exploring, watching the videos, the tutorials, everything, you know, seeking. But I love that if there are more such books that are interactive and yet not too expensive, because now we are using Calculus 8th edition, so they gave us a little bit of discount, but still, it's still more expensive. OpenStax is good, but when I combined it with WebAssign, I found it more useful. It costs, I think, that way about $40. But the classical book used to be good before we knew about those wonderful things online, because of the sidebars and the index and pictures, and there was errata, and you had several editions, so it was proofread. I don't find it, and I don't know many OERs, so that's my concern.
We've actually made OERs in-house here, and we've also used some of the ones from outside for our developmentals as well, and then just rewritten them, you know, to fit our classes. And our students seem to be very, very thrilled with the ones that we did right up front, you know, that we started. The other ones seem to be a little bit more problematic for our students, I think, is more than anything else, even though they come with videos and things like that that are also open resource. But really seriously, we found this one that we did very well. It took us maybe 3 years to really do it right. We started out wrong and changed it, and it really worked very well. So it's just that there isn't much out there for as you go higher up, there isn't much out there that's really decent. So someone else want to chime in? Oh, we're shy today. Okay. All right. So I want to ask, the other thing I wanted to ask, I know we don't have too much more time left, is at the end, he starts talking about the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge being, you know, well, we understand what we're saying because we know what, you know, we have a background thing, but to other people, we don't realize that they don't understand or they're not on the same wavelength. How can we alter our thinking? What can we do to more closely understand, I guess, empathize, and somehow shift so that we can explain to our students better?
I think this pandemic it really has been given everyone a rude awakening. Many who were not being compassionate, especially in the math arena, compassionate to students, excuses. I'm not saying excuses are excuses, right? We all have been students. Right and left grandmother would die. How many grandmothers you have that they die so often? But you see, so it just given all of us this rude awakening that we have to put ourselves in their shoe, in their situation, think of where they are, you know, in every aspect of their lives. And this way, I believe that it has put the academic side closer to the students as far as compassion and sympathy towards what they are going through. So it is, I think unless we put ourselves in their shoes, we wouldn't be realizing what they are going through. Like for instance, a few of my students in this open resource course that I'm using, I am able to give them exceptions, okay? So because, it's not that quizzes, they are pulled from a pool of questions. So therefore, I can give someone 100 exceptions, right? Because every quiz they take is going to be different. So they email me, can you give me an exception? This is my excuse. I don't ask them for any proof. So I give it to them. Beauty of it is that on top of everybody's account, it says how many exceptions on what topics and what assignments I have given to them. Okay, they asked me 2 exceptions. Every time they send me an email, I said to them, I hope this is the last time you're asking me this. Oh, how many times can they ask? 10 times? Hasn't been there. Maybe 3 times, 4 times. That's okay. That's okay. Because I believe that, as part of my job, I have to be teaching these students how to study, how to learn. I want them to be lifelong learners. I always tell my students that the math you learn in this class, in these 15 weeks, the minute you step out of the semester finishes, it's all gone. But what you learn in this class, as far as those soft skills, how to study, time management, everything else from me, those are going to stay with you for a lifetime. So I really love the explanation that one faculty gave. They asked this person, what are you teaching? And she said, I am not teaching, I am transforming lives. And I believe if we look at our job in that sense, transforming lives, how do you transform lives? How do you do it? With compassion, with sympathy. I know that this is not everyone's thing. Some people, they say, well, I'm not their mom and dad. Nobody asked you to be their mom and dad, but practice some compassion.
It's cool. Okay, does anybody else have anything to add? Or any questions that they want to ask?
I would just say that Banaz when you shared about, when you were growing up and math was difficult for you, again, in the developmental classes, I find that in terms of empathy and understanding and connecting, that's huge, because I would bet for all of us, our whole career in math was not easy. Like there were areas. Now I have to be careful when I say, when I learned this in 6th grade, I'm not going to say that because they're college students, but I can say, this was my struggle, and it took a long time to get over it. And I understand your nervousness before a test. I understand how you feel, or how I think you feel right now. And that empathy and being able to relate to students and just sort of get to know them a little bit better goes a very, very long way.
My students find it very interesting that I failed several classes in college. And then they say, oh, but you were a math whiz. And I'm going, no. One of the ones I failed, actually, one I failed was math. And they sort of, they go, oh, and then I explain why,
Right.
I explain I didn't have, when they're complaining about developmental and, oh, why are you, why do we have to go through this again? I'm going, well, this is the case. And I explain I didn't have the prerequisites, and we didn't have developmental studies when I was in school. So they were like, oh, and I said, so I had to self-teach myself. Now, do you think you'd want to do that? No. Well, then, here we are.
I think we always need to remember where we had trouble.
Yeah.
And avoid saying whatever topic we're doing, this is easy. And then something I picked up in Phoenix that I really need to start practicing. Somebody makes a mistake, they're having a hard time, and they say, I can't do this. Your response is, well, you just haven't gotten it yet. You can keep going. Just not yet, but you will.
That's so cool. I remember that.
I love the yet.
Good word.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, well, it's that bewitching hour. An hour goes by so fast in these. It really does. And there were some very good suggestions about books, just so that you know, in case you were not watching the chat at the same time. How to Bake Pie by Eugenia Cheng, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and Mathematical Mindsets by Joe Bowler. And I'm asking, please, send suggestions, post suggestions in the community. We have a book club community. Post suggestions there. I'll be sending out a poll with books from the list from before, and I'll add these to it. And we'll see, we'll try to do a poll and narrow it down and come up with another book soon. And if we want to continue this conversation with the Alan Alda book, let me know. That as well. I'm enjoying this so much, and I hope you are too. And I hope that we do get a session at the Toronto for books too, so that we can all get together and hang out and do this. And I don't know how you all feel, but any kind of feedback would be really great. And Judy, thank you so much for suggesting this. Okay.
Oh, you're welcome. It was
Well, wait a
my
minute.
pleasure.
And thank you for suggesting the book club to begin with back several years ago with Darlene Winningham.
Okay. Well, you always wanted to do one at the conference.
Yes, I did.
And there was a thought of people are getting ready to travel with their classes and all. You put out a book. Will we really have time to read before we go to the conference? And then when COVID shut everything down and we were trying to do more with technology, I thought this would be a great time because people can read on their own and be ready to get online and discuss. And we don't have to wait. So
Yeah. So it'll be good. Yes, but I'd still like to do the in-person. And the reason being is because we can have several books out and sort of, say, hey, well, this is what we sort of want to do. But at the same time, if we let people know maybe 5 or 6 months in advance about a book that would be for Toronto. So I want to take whatever we do on the list and whatever we poll, I want to take one of the ones that's at the top and use that for the suggestion for the book club in the session that I'm going to suggest for this coming conference. And hopefully that will work.
It's out of my hands from now on.
I know that, but I'm still plugging it.
I know. Maybe promote it as a, let's get together and look again at what we've done this past year for our books. Bring your coffee, sit around and talk. If you haven't yet had a chance to talk about these books or hear what other people think, come on and join us.
Okay, and then just rehash the books that we all talk about between now and then.
Yeah, and then you won't be pressuring. It won't look like people are going to be pressured to read something that they haven't had a chance to read already. I don't know.
Okay, and then, then I can also send out a list of the books. If it gets accepted, I can send out a list of the books ahead of time.
Right.
Or maybe even if worse comes to worse and we don't get accepted again, maybe do something in the impromptu room.
Well, I was going to say, there's always the impromptu room, and you'll know far enough ahead, you can just start advertising and send out messages. We're going to meet at this time.
Yes. Yes.
Make it an unofficial, official meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So hopefully I will get to see everybody in Toronto. And
there is a long time till Toronto now.
Hopefully I'll get to see everybody in Toronto. Oh, I've been planning this for years. So there, and also hopefully I'll get to see you. Does anybody have an objection to meeting, say, in January sometime or February? So I think January would probably be best, towards the end of January, just before classes really get into high gear. Would that work for everybody? Okay, well, we'll send out a thing. Barry, go ahead.
Yep. Oh, I was just nice to thank you. This is really good.
Yeah, this has been really great. Please invite other people to come and join us, please. Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. It was really great.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.